Well, in 2007, you're about 48 years old. You arrive to a small country named Timor-Leste?
Oh, yeah.
Am I pronouncing it right?
Yeah, that is correct, yeah.
Timor-Leste.
Yeah.
So, and they're in the middle of a civil war.
Yeah.
So you start a civilian security company, essentially.
Yeah.
And that becomes the largest employer in the whole country.
Yeah.
So now you're entrenched into the government of a country.
Yes.
And things start to go bad.
Depends. It's a matter of speaking, you know. They were going pretty well for me.
Well, okay, there's a coup d'etat where the president is shot and the prime minister goes missing.
Yeah, but if that's your gig, man, that's a good day, you know. I mean, it's perspective. But I've got to get you there first, okay?
Okay.
So let's take the years after I left the FBI, from Afghanistan, all those bad environments, Kosovo, Afghanistan, Yemen, Indonesia, Colombia, like shithole situations around the world. That was my life for a very long period of time. When I left the FBI and went to the journalism cover, and I was working intelligence operations in many of those countries, one of them was Somalia. So in 2006, in February or March of 2006, the U.S. government had not been into Somalia since the Black Hawk Down movie, the first battle of Mogadishu. Mm-hmm. And they found that bad guys were moving down the Saudi Peninsula into Yemen, and they were going across the Straits of Yemen into Somalia. And once they were in Somalia, nobody could get them because we didn't have a presence in Somalia. So they needed some moron to go into Somalia to try to facilitate that. And that moron was me. So I went into Somalia when they stood up the transitional federal government, which moved from Nairobi into a town called Baidoa because Mogadishu was too hot. So imagine the movie Black Hawk Down. The military, U.S. government pulls out. Now it's a barren wasteland. There's no planes. There's no government. There's nothing, right? It's just a wasteland. And I went in. I chartered a flight. It was a Cessna, twin-engine Cessna plane, and I flew into Baidoa. And long story short, I got stuck there. I had a technical, I had a whole crew. I had a Dushka, like 12.5 millimeter anti-aircraft gun in the back of a Toyota pickup truck. And I got guys with PKMs and the bandoliers and the AKs, the whole thing, had the whole thing. And I got stuck there, could not get out. And I ended up at the second best airport in Somalia called K50, which is about 50 clicks south of the main airport, which was closed due to the fighting. And I got there and I had $600 in my pocket, shot the windows out of the car. I'd lost my technical and I'm standing there and they took my money and they took my passport. And I was literally in Somalia. It was a bad day. Obviously I made it out, but it was a really, really heavy day. Heavy in my life at that time was really heavy. Made it out. So I get back to the States and a buddy of mine, most of my time was in Venice, California. Mm-hmm. And a buddy of mine had a shop there, like our clubhouse. And we had a party and he said, you got to stop acting like a pussy. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, this fantasy you have of getting killed has already been done. Hemingway already did it, get your own personality. And he said, you need to get over it. And I thought to myself, and I said, it's a good point that maybe at this point in life I need war, but I need a war I could manage. So long story short, I found that war in Timor. It was called East Timor at the time. It became Timor. So I went from Somalia, which was at the time the newest country in the world. I was literally in the room when they made it a country. It was a warehouse in Baidoa.
You were in the room when they created Somalia.
I was in the room.
Wow.
It was a warehouse,
okay,
right, in this shithole. I mean, it was literally a landfill with nothing in it because it was bombed flat. And it was a warehouse with no roof. And they've got the government, the CIA-backed transitional federal government, and they got like 50 guys from the UN in all these planes, and they got a marching band, and the marching band had uniforms from like the 40s, and they had they had a kick drum, a marching band drum,
yeah.
And it was so poor, it only had one side of the drum, so they could only hit it with, and they're like wearing these, orange hats, and they're wearing these bright uniforms, and the horns are all bent. And we had the national anthem, And the whole thing was staged. It was ridiculous. And then the UN flies away, and everybody flies away. And then the CIA starts bringing in a bunch of guns, and that led to the Second Battle of Mogadishu. So I go, okay, that government didn't stand. But I was literally in the room when they formed the newest government in the world. That was the ceremony, acknowledged by the UN. So when I went to Timor, half the island of Timor had broken away from Indonesia. So the Indonesians came in and wiped out, like, I don't know, you can Google it, but I don't know, it's like 300, 400,000 people maybe.
Wow. Okay. That's crazy.
They bombed the country. They blew up the roads. They took down the power cables. They burned all the houses. They completely flattened the country. The UN came in, got the country going again. Then they had a civil war. So I went in during the Civil War. And the Civil War was, that was heavy enough in its own right. So yes, then I went down there with a suitcase and I started this company and I built it up to 4,000. When I sold the company, I had 4,000 employees. I was bigger than the Army. And during that time, we had a coup d'etat where rebels came in and they shot the president, a guy named Ramos Horta. They shot the shit out of him. He survived. And the prime minister, Xanana Gusmao, was attacked, but he survived as well. So the government came back. But I mean, I woke up on a Tuesday morning and I secured the entire United Nations mission in Timor. Everything the United Nations had in Timor, I secured their entire operation. So it's like a bad Tuesday when you wake up and...
Okay, because I interviewed Erik Prince, who started Blackwater.
Yes.
This sounds similar.
Erik Prince and I walk very similar fall lines. He had more helicopters and a lot more money than I did. But we're very, very, very similar guys.
Okay, but you actually sold this company.
Yeah.
Why?
Because I knew that the UN was going to pull out. And when the UN pulled out, all the money was going to go with them. Timor is a crazy country. It's this island in the middle of nowhere, but they're on a nuclear highway. They had, at the time, something like $8 billion in reserves of oil. Vlad, you'd walk out, I could take you places in Timor, and they have ponds that are oil bubbling up out of the ground. There's like a gravel pit that looks like a giant barbecue that's like 50 yards long, just oil and natural gas bubbling out of the ground. So they had huge amounts of money. Australia wanted the money. China wanted the money. The oil, I'm sorry, wanted the oil. There was tremendous amounts of money that went through there. The mission in Timor was there. It was a bizarre, bizarre place at that time because all the interest there at the same time. And I went in, found a way to make, to get involved in it. That also had a component in the intelligence community. And so I built the thing up. I knew that if the country got to a certain point, the United Nations was going to pull out. They were going to shut down a mission. That's what they do around the world. They go to a country, they bring it back, then they move everything in, then they move everything out. Roll up the sidewalks, take out the furniture, and it goes back to being a jungle. I knew the day that was going to happen. So I structured a deal because I had 4,000 employees. And while I had the company, every one of them was made a member of a national labor union. And I'm not going to get into employment, but anybody who's ever made a 4,000 person a month payroll understands that there's a lot of different variables. It was a big business.
Right. Now,
so I had to structure my way up.
Well, I looked it up. Timor-Leste is actually relatively stable these days.
Yes. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So after all the chaos, they became a stable country.
Yes.
But you weren't there at the time.
I have no interest in a stable country.
Okay.
No.